guests who are connecting with me on this very important matter. No one, um, in terms of the persons that I've been looking forward to hear from on this subject, I really want to hear from you. 055 1111 Please do send us a WhatsApp message if you are listening in. What do you make of the vetting process so far and the quality of the process? And let me introduce to you Abdul Karim Ibrahim. He's a lot of things. A journalist. He's sometimes says he's a former journalist. He's a media critic and all that. And so he's connecting with us on this important matter. Karim, it's good to have you on Ghana Connect.
Thank you very much for having me.
So, what is your proper designation? Are you a retired journalist? Are you on break? What are you doing now?
I think as it stands now, I am
a media critic.
I'm a retired journalist. But yeah, of course, for the context of this conversation, I've also been doing some work for the past 2 years with a parliamentary network, and so I get to interact with parliamentarians across the world a lot. And so, yeah, I hope that also reflects in the kind of conversation we're going to have today.
Great. Nana Kakari is also one of our regulars on this show, and she's been doing a lot of fireworks in terms of the big issues that she's been raising on this particular conversation, and I'm really, really interested in getting to hear some of the big conversations she's looking to have. And she's a senior international affairs and political analyst. She's based in Atlanta, Georgia, in the US. Nana, it's good to have you connected with us.
Thank you, Kwaku. Great to join you this evening.
And then Philip Saba is an aide to the First Deputy Speaker and Chairman of the Appointment Committee. Philip, it's good to have you connected with us. Hello, Philip.
Yeah, Kwaku, nice joining you. Good evening.
Great. And pretty shortly, I'll be joined by Dr. Rashid Rahman. He is with the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs, Executive Director, in paying attention to some of these things. So let me start with you, Abdul Karim. I want to hear your initial thoughts about the process so far. And to be very honest, this topic, this conversation is being had based on this message you sent me early in the week that piqued my interest about some of the things that were happening at the vetting committee. But before we get into some of the specifics, you've been following this process keenly. What have you made of it so far?
Well, thank you again, Kwaku. Now, it sounds like we're a cabal doing production behind the scenes and discussing these issues. But I thought also, having followed your show for a very long time and having an interest in the way you sum up the most important issues of the week to generate conversation about it. I thought it was a very interesting observation for myself, and I suspected that it also connected with many people, because in other pockets and spaces, I'd had some conversation about it. But generally, my view of the vetting in this case has essentially led me into like a completely different plane that I used not to be on when it came to analyzing and thinking about the vetting. So that's where I'm going to pitch my point from, which is to say that I'm not very sure what exactly it is that we are doing, right? So that's my biggest takeaway from the vetting process. I am unsure whether it is supposed to be a vetting as in a vetting for a job process, or whether or not it's supposed to be a vetting for us to get some insight into who, irrespective of what happens, is going to be in that role, or it is just a case of fulfilling a certain democratic credential, which is to say that don't just choose people to become what, take them through a certain process of being grilled, and what all of that look like. And so for me, that's where I really am, until I'm able to really answer that question. And I think that I will be able to raise some questions also for those who think that that question is already answered. I am not very sure about because the way that the questions themselves have gone, I think some of the students that occasionally I go and teach at the University of Ghana in the debate club, right, would ask better questions if you give them 15 minutes to prepare than majority of the things that we have had from them. But then again, whether or not their questions are important would be dependent on what the ultimate question of what the vetting process is supposed to be for. When that question is answered, we would perhaps have some further insights into addressing this. So I just leave it there on that bit quickly.
I mean, you've hit it right there on when the matters having to do with the legality and the basis. You know, this was a case in 1997, 1996, 1997, when Rawlings was appointing second set of ministers, and then the then MPP minority leader did go to the Supreme Court to get an interpretation. It was when it was affirmed that prior approval meant Parliament going through a certain process to vet ministerial nominees. Whatever the process will take, there must be some form of approval. And once the term of a president lapses, even if the person is doing a second term, the ministerial nominees, even if they had been vetted prior in the previous term, would have to come again. And so it's a big conversation there. But Dr. Draman, you've been following this process for as long as it has been going on. This particular year has piqued a lot of interest, particularly also because of the way it started. And you've spoken on our platform and other platforms on a couple of occasions where you've aired your opinion on how the things have been going so far. I'm interested in getting to know whether you think the committee has been doing itself any favors with how it's been conducting this process since last week, Monday.
I joined late, so I didn't hear the name of the previous speaker.
That's Karim.
Okay, but I think Karim raised some very fundamental kind of questions. I was just talking on Eyewitness News just before I joined you, and I was telling the host that, look, I mean, is this process? Oh, sorry. I was telling the host, is this process just a process of ticking the box, or it's a process where we really want to assess the level of integrity, the level of accountability, and so on of the nominees, and in some instances say to His Excellency the President that no, this one is not fit for purpose. You might have to come again and give us another candidate. Over the years, Parliament after Parliament, I mean, I don't recall seeing a situation where the Appointments Committee, through its work, has said to any president that, look, this nominee is, not fit for purpose. Is it the case that our presidents have been doing their homework very well to the extent that they are sending excellent nominees before the various appointments committees? Well, I don't think so. Maybe the professor is there to help us. You write an exam, I don't think you can always come out with 100%. So for me, fundamentally, this is what is beginning to worry me in terms of the relevance of this committee. Otherwise, we wake up someday, people will say, look, whatever they say, whatever they do, you go to the committee, just a formality. In the 8th Parliament, we saw what happened. And that was when some of us said the NDC failed the first test of holding the government to account, because they said so many things about Honorable Ofuriata, Honorable Aokumsin, Kudiopon Nkrumah, Honorable, yet when it came down to the wire, all these people passed and they became ministers of state. It's beginning to get some of us to raise some questions about this committee and about the whole process. Going back now to some of the specifics, like the professor has said, sometimes you hear some of the questions being asked, and then you ask yourself, really? Is this what this is all about? Or sometimes you hear, some of the members of the committee, I bless you, I don't have any question, I wish you all the best. And I say, really? In an economy that is on its knees, in an economy that is confronted with so many challenges, in an economy where some of us sometimes, 2 days ago, I didn't have water to bath in my house. I live in Accra. I live, not in a remote rural area and so on. Yet I can't get water. I only get water once a week, and there are so many issues in our educational sector. Honorable Aruna Idrisu was before the committee. Most of the people said, we don't have any questions for you. you don't ask a question and thinking that maybe you are going to embarrass the person. You ask a question to find out, what is it that the nominee is going to do in that particular sector, to fix whatever challenges that there are. And sometimes in the process, you bring the best out of the nominee, and maybe you even get them to begin thinking.
Yeah.
It suggests to me, perhaps, that maybe some of them are not prepared, because this is not just an exercise where you just go and sit down and anything that comes out of your mouth, that's what you say. They need to prepare. They have support in Parliament. They are researchers. If not, they can go out, as is done in many parliaments, get experts who work in the particular sector to help them, and so on. And again, that also brings another question to me, and this is something that some of us have been saying to Parliament over the years, not this Parliament, this particular legislature, but I mean many parliaments before, that rather than the omnibus kind of way of vetting and confirming ministerial nominees, why don't we perhaps look at a situation where those who work in the sector committees, take on these ministerial nominees and have a conversation, because then they are very well versed in terms of the workings of the sector, the issues there, and so on. You bring people and expect them to be experts in
all fields:
interior, security, finance, law. If they don't have support, or they don't go out for support, they are going to show up and do a very shoddy job.
And look, it's very interesting what you said, and I know you're a very busy man. You have a lot on your plate. Please hold it there for a minute. I'll come back to you, and then you can take leave of us. And the point you made there about the subject matter committees doing their work. Thankfully, we have the U.S. Senate confirmation hearings ongoing at the same time, where the Judiciary Committee versus the Attorney General and other persons who are going into the judicial sector. If it's matters having to do with defense, you have a Defense Select Committee who have been looking into that. And let me bring in Nana Kakari to chip in on that. Nana Kakari, you are based in the United States, and we have the Senate confirmation hearings going on side by side hours. Do you sense a certain gulf of difference? And what do you think we can pick? Particularly, I mean, just today and yesterday, we've had two Republican senators coming out and saying that we're not going to vote for this Republican nominee, that is Pete Hegseth for the defense secretary. They've said that they're not going to vote for him, even though they are all Republicans, because of this issue or that. And we've seen how rigorous the confirmation process is. You look at the two processes. What are your key takeaways?
Yeah, Kwaku, you know what? I've been following both vetting processes here in the United States and also in Ghana. And by the way, the top story with Pete Hegseth, I actually worked with Pete Hegseth at Fox News Network. So I had interest in what he has to say and the background information that they are revealing about him right now. But when it comes to the Ghana vetting, I was looking at the line of questioning, I was looking at the tone, I was looking at the language. And when you look at the line of questioning between the NDC ministers and the nominee, you can see that they were simply softball questions. You know, for instance, you have John Domelo exchange with the nominee for youth development, or Pari Ado. And it seems you can clearly tell the brotherhood between them, right? I dare for you, I dare for you too. Those were unnecessary at a point where we are trying to figure out whether you are the right person for that position that you are vying for. Also, let's look at just few hours ago with the nominee for Interior Minister, Mubarak. Exchange asking, how old are you? How old were you in 2009? Those were all trivial questions that I don't think were necessary at this time of the vetting, or even necessary at all to ask any nominee how old he was. I understand he was trying to establish, his experience and all that, but those were unnecessary. Also, looking at the exchange between the nominee for agriculture, Eric Opoku, and I forgot the other minister's name, there was a point where actually the minority leader, Afenyo Makin, there was a point where Opoku wanted to answer some questions, and then Afenyo Makin was shutting him up. Let's cut it out. We know you are smart. Cut it out there. I mean, the decorum, that was disrespectful to me, because here he is and we wanted to hear from him. So, and then overall disruptive, conversation. There were a point where I felt like I was at a busy marketplace or even in the club, because I couldn't hear who was talking and I wasn't able to make sense out of the dialogue between, the politicians. Now, with the exchange between Eric Opoku and minority leader Afenyo Makin, it was really surprising to hear Afenyo Makin telling Eric Opoku that cut it short, because this was coming from somebody who couldn't even let go. He being referred to as minority leader just few months ago during the campaign. So I was surprised that came from him. We know you are smart, cut it out. Maybe he should practice what he preaches. But overall, for me, I was looking at it from the international lens. As you mentioned, Donald Trump officially took office on Monday. The inauguration was on Monday, and he's been signing a lot of executive orders. One thing that piqued my interest was there is an agreement, the African Growth and Opportunity Act, we call it the AGOA, which is basically an agreement between the United States and African nations, basically allowing African countries to export goods to the US without paying taxes. Now, what is going on right now, just this week, President Trump has slapped tariffs and taxes on Canada, Mexico, and China. And he has also opposed to the renewal of this AGOA Act, which expires this year. This was something that I thought would be brought to the table. I wanted to know what the administration, President Mahama, is doing if, now that the Republican Party controls both chambers, I'm not seeing this act to be renewed, which means that Ghana, being one of our top export, cocoa, gold, what have you, we will then have to pay taxes when we are exporting these goods to the United States. And so I wanted to hear practical questions as to, what are we doing? How are we preparing ourselves to meet these kind of challenges that are looming? Another thing that I wanted to also point out was when it comes to Haruna Idrisu, the education minister.
Please hold it there for me, because I like where you just ended this, and I'll come back to you again. You talked about the disruptiveness in the committee, people speaking when they are not being called, and people sometimes flatly really not listening to the chairman if he said, I've given the mic to this person or not. People have sought to say that the chairman hasn't controlled the committee pretty well. Let me bring you in, Saba. What do you make of the criticism leveled against Bernard Ahina for chairman of the committee, and those who said that he hasn't stamped his authority on the committee and is just has allowed the disruptive behavior of some of the members to go on?
All right. Kwaku, good evening. If you can hear me, the issues that have been raised are around the state of the vetting process. I know this has been one of the very effective vetting processes over the years. Of course, I stand on the authority of Article 74 of the Constitution, which mandates the president to Article 78 mandates the president to appoint cabinet. I mean, that's ministers of state to steer the affairs of the ministry. And as Article 78(1), it's clearly stated that a person cannot be appointed for a minister of state unless, of course, that person is qualified to be a member of parliament. So when you jump to Article 94 of the Constitution, that stipulates the qualifications of a member of parliament, or what makes one a member of parliament, is stated clearly there. Now, if these people who have been nominated over that they have been vetted, majority of those people who have been vetted are people who are parliamentarians, who the people of Ghana have reposed confidence in that they should represent them at parliament, at the legislature. What is out there again, if the qualification of a minister is that you should be a parliamentarian, if the people think that you are fit to be an MP, and of course, one way or the other, you have had some knowledge about the field that they are sending you. Well, I heard a brother earlier on said that MPs ministers should be people who be selected from the sectors, so who have in-depth knowledge about the sectors that they are going to do. I'm not sure that he wants to suggest that MPs are not professionals or they are not learned in one field or the other. You understand? The issue is that, Kweku, no, if you come, you are a parliamentary correspondent. When you come to parliament, you know MPs have different backgrounds. You can't say that Ato Forsen doesn't know about finance. You can't say that Bujinapo doesn't have anything to do with energy. And you see, to feel that these people and politicians are just politicians. They have nothing to do with professionalism or a field of expertise. They are not experts in any field. It's a
No, but Philip, the
decision to make.
conduct of the MPs have been on full
No,
display for the public to
no,
see.
Kweku, what I'm
See,
saying,
and they've
I
looked
can
at the
hear you,
questions that
Kweku,
have been
but if
asked.
Kweku, I can hear you, but if you can hear me, the issue is that the president has outlined a manifesto, which would come up with a policy document, which will be implemented and is being crafted by specials and people who are like who have in-depth knowledge about the field of this thing. Atu
Oh,
Forsen
give
has
us
been
a
a
break.
deputy
Give us
finance
a
Yes,
break.
minister.
but Philip, how
See,
does
Ato
that
Forsen
relate
has
to
been
the
a
quality of
deputy finance
questions
minister,
and the
and all over
quality
the years he has
of
been a finance minister.
regulation?
He came back to be a ranking on finance, and you can't say that he being qualified to be a member of parliament and be appointed there. He has nothing to do or he has nothing to offer.
So they
Let's
cannot
not
be
make
asked
it look
questions.
like we are. Let's not make it look like we are overly wiser than our leaders and determine what is necessary or not for them to ask. I mean, an MP that you have voted for to represent you in parliament, representing you to ask a question, and you think the question of that MP is not necessary, then
No,
you even
but
voting for
Philip,
that MP to come.
that is the opinion of the public. The public have been looking at the vetting, and they are telling you that some of the questions have just not been quality enough for a country, for instance, that we all agree that we have a difficulty with the economy, have a difficulty with the education minister. So much so that if you have the education minister, people say, oh, this is our leader, he's a leader. So 1 hour, the vetting process is over. There are questions about free senior high school, feeding challenges and all that. That is the kind of issues people are raising in terms of the committee's ability to raise some of these issues. Don't you agree that they are legitimate?
Kweku, I would want to compare our thoughts, the people of Ghana, what we all feel right now, to that proverbial saying of Jesus Christ in the Bible, that these people are like some group of people that they are when the child goes to the market. When you sing for them, they don't sing. When you sing dirges, they don't cry. When you sing lullabies for them, they don't even laugh about it. These are the same people saying that the leader of the appointment committee and the ranking members are dragging the nominees. They are dragging the vetting, so it's making it very distractive. People are not complying. Now that they have done some that is even shorter to 1 hour, you people are complaining about it again. What at all are we not going to complain about?
Well, Philip, it's not an either-or situation, but I like the point you make, and I want you to hold it there for me briefly. I know you have to do. You are doing a lot of things in Parliament. You have to go. Please hold it there for me. I'll come back to you, Karim. What do you make of what he's saying? He says that you are speaking, not you necessarily, but a lot of people who have criticized the process are speaking from two sides of your mouth.
Yeah. So first of all, yeah, I think the point is true that nobody's claiming to be wiser than anybody, and like I mentioned, asking or sitting down to set a number of questions to ask is not particularly a very difficult enterprise, right? So it cannot really be the basis for anything. I do not think the point that anybody is making is to suggest that if perhaps they were there, they would have asked a better question. I mean, there could be a million good questions to ask. That's why for me, I started with the question of what exactly it is that we're looking out for in this process. And that is also why the previous speaker's analysis is completely strawmanned, right? I mean, it begins by the reference to the Constitution and why we are doing this process and all of that. I think it's also completely irrelevant. The question is, based on what you see, the kind of discourse that you see there, what is the point of it? People have raised obvious questions about some trivialities that happen there and all of that. I have my own view in terms of why those kinds of things would play out. But I think that let the point not be made to suggest that somehow, because someone is in parliament, they also possess all of this wisdom in this world. I mean, this claim also that you send someone there to go and represent you, so somehow they'll make the most important contribution on your behalf is completely flawed, right? And again, this is also a process that requires a certain number of people to do that. It's not as though my
are we
hold
aware?
on. It's not as though one member
the
of parliament
public was served?
Okay, so Philip, please hold it there. Philip, hold it there for a second. I'll get you the time for you to respond. Let Karim conclude on his point.
Your question is over. Or
yeah, but again,
the public was asked the same questions and people did.
But again,
so why do you make it look like they are asking lame questions?
Yeah, I get your question. That's fine. Let me answer you. Again, this is the point of trivialization that I have a problem with. And it's the same kind of analytical tools that you are using, which will bring you to the conclusion that you have come to, that this is the most effective vetting process that you have seen. Because the way you understand this is to suggest that anybody who's raising critique is necessarily saying that I can ask a good number of questions, a better number of questions than someone else. That's not the point. The point that I've been raising with you is to ask the question, what is the essence of this performance that we are seeing, right? And there's a misnomer with even the US example that we keep getting. Because again, if you look at the politics that we are looking at here, there's a certain oftentimes a very clearly defined political lines on issues, right? So when there's a vetting process in the US and someone is coming from the Republican end and you are engaging them, you're looking at them within this very clearly defined ideological position that says that it doesn't matter if they are finance or attorney general or they are in charge of environment and all of that. The ideology is pretty consistent. You can see where the problem is. You can fight against it. Here, our elites have a lot more in common, even in the political class, than the very many of us who are at the bottom there.
Yeah, I mean, Karim, because you said that,
yes,
there's a point that piqued my interest during the vetting, where Afenyo Markin, while interviewing Agboja, talked about the political class versus the technocratic class. I thought it was very interesting the way he framed it and the way he put it across.
Yeah, I think for me, it was a very lazy attempt again by Afenyo Markin to displace responsibility upon themselves and give it elsewhere. I think it is true that the technocrats also have their own problems, right? The civil service, for instance, has become completely corrupt among many other things. But there's also a reason why the political class, at the end of the day, holds the ultimate power in the way that we have organized our states. They are the leadership, like it or not. So they cannot neglect their responsibilities and turn around and create this forced debate between the technocrats or the civil service and the kind of problems that they create and all of that. For me, this is just to finally end on this. This is for me the challenge. I think it is just a performative enterprise that exists to just get all of us very happy and all of. Because when you look at it at the end of the day, it is extremely difficult for the vetting process to return a verdict that satisfies us. Because the way that it is, if you are Afenyo Markin, you have to come and do some shenanigans and get the watching crowd to feel like, the minority is pouring some sun into the gari. But at the end of the day, the conclusion is very clear. And sometimes asking very silly questions about whether or not there are other people in the opposing end who have bought lands in cantonments. When the principle that we are talking about is an ethical one that says that if you are in political office, should you be able to leverage on the power that you have to buy state property, one, and two, at ridiculously lowered prices. That's the kind of conversation that we want to have. But then we have this equalization attempt and all. So it's a facade. And for me, I need us to get to that point. If we don't get it, we would be always be disappointed by the kinds of questions that we see and all of that, because it's fake. So it's not supposed to really illuminate the kind of discourse that we want to see and all of that. It won't happen.
Interesting. Doc, before you take leave of us, you started with how you really believe we will improve this process. And we must. And this is how it's going to be in the new standing orders for some time, unless we revisit the entire way we do it. I like the point you make about subject matter committees and all that. But how do we make this process in such a way that the Ghanaian people rally along and take it much more serious?
Well, I think that's the point I was making earlier, but it looks like Philip, or whatever his name is, has misconstrued what we were saying. Nobody is saying that Honorable Tufosin, Honorable Aruna and the others are not qualified. What we are saying is not even the fact that it should be subject matter experts who should go to the ministries. No. we're just talking about the vetting process. That subject matter committees, the Committee on Education, should vet the nominee for education, so that way maybe the process might be improved and be better than what we are seeing now, where people are expected to have knowledge across archaeology to zoology. So the US has simplified it. Judiciary people who are versed with the issues in that sector deal with nominees for that sector. A Greek committee does. So that's the point I was making. And let it be clear to that gentleman that nobody is saying these MPs are not qualified or they cannot do their job. No. After all, that job is a figurehead job. What we are saying is that the process needs to be improved. At the end of the day, when the governance of this country goes bad, as we saw in the last administration, all of us are affected. So we have seen some improvement in terms of subject matter, committees being joined to the appointments committee as maybe friends of the committees, or however they are calling it. That is an improvement, but that is just one small step. We hope that maybe the next time the standing orders are going to be revised, we will see a situation where this process is decentralized. I think that for me, that is, the day I'm waiting to see. And then, hopefully, then we can see if you are an Greek minister, at least you go and answer questions before the Greek committee and see how and what kind of plans you have for that sector. I think that perhaps maybe that might be one way in which this process will be improved. Yeah. Some of us are in this business not because, we are just interested in criticizing Parliament. No, we are in this business because we are making suggestions, and daily, I think over the years, Parliament has taken on some of the suggestions, and we have seen some improvement. So let no one think that, these people cannot be criticized or we cannot offer, our views. We are not wiser than the members of Parliament. And in fact, they even are more courageous than most of us, because they have been courageous enough to put themselves up for a vote. We have to salute that courage. It's not everybody who has that courage. But we are saying, if you put yourself in the public domain as a public figure, I think, as Ghanaians, we have the right, to make some commentary, especially when we see that things are not going the way they are going.
Right.
If we continue in this way, doing our politics this way, the last 8 years will be worse than what is coming.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Dr. Rashid Rahman is Executive Director of the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. Thank you so much for joining us. Philip Saba, you're making an intervention.
Yeah. So, to the man who just spoke, whatever his name is, that I also don't know.
Philip Saba, he's called Dr. Rashid Rahman, like I've said. And when he said he couldn't figure out your name, I'm not sure he meant that with disrespect, is because he just couldn't figure it out. So if you can just raise the specific issue that you wanted to, then we can make some progress.
I take objection to that of him saying that whatever my name is. I know you mentioned he's a doctor, and I'm not sure he's not a herbal doctor. No.
Philip Saba, I think we can continue like this, but thank you very much for that. Dr. Rashid Rahman has also made his own intervention, and in terms of some of these conversations that have come up. Let me read some comments, and then I can really get back onto the conversation. There's a big conversation with a lot of people sending their text message. I want to also hear from you. If you haven't sent a message, please do so. The window is still open, 055 11 997. This one is from Dede. He says, "Good evening, Joy FM. I really don't like the way and manner the micro-minority leader asks question. The minority take strong exception to anybody calling them micro-minority. So you are put on notice, Dede. Let's see. You continue that some of the questions are irrelevant, and he also asks more than 45 questions. Vetting is not a war front. These are some of the things that has sent them into position. That is Dede coming in there. This one is from Prof. Intema. He says, the so-called experts who claim to have the best questions, they have MPs Why can't they channel their questions through them? Prof, thank you very much. Major one, listening from Kumasi says, Kwaku, when the name of the nominees were made public, everyone has a right to ask questions via memoranda. If they did not do that, why are the panelists questioning the questions they should have asked now? Philip is just responding like what happens in a committee meeting. He's not listening. Know that he needs to protect his job. Okay, well, that's Michael from Legon. Is he saying, asking Minister for Youth Development nominee if he's a Freemason and who is the mother, a relevant question at the vetting? That is Michael from Legon. A lot of you sending us your messages. But Philip, someone just sent a text that I really want to take your view on. We've all criticized some of part of who are on the committee and put to them certain questions for them to ask. And they believe those are all ways to improve the process. You agree with that, Karim, don't you?
Well, I do, Kwaku, to an extent, but also I thought that it's very important to clear this point, that, again, at least for me, this is not a question of who can ask how many intelligent questions in 1 minute. I don't think this is the point of the kind of conversation that we're trying to have here. I do personally even I admit that if you are working within the parliamentary setup in the way that they work and in the way that we have come to learn about, sometimes we see them in many other cases. Today, Mr. Montaka talked about his relationship with Mr. Matthew Opoku Prompe. And if all of that are true, then clearly it is not out of place to expect sometimes some moments of friendship and those kinds of things. That's not the most important thing. It is the sum total of what you get from the entirety of the interaction. And generally, the feeling tends to be like a group of people who do two things. One, if they are in minority, obviously, to use this opportunity to point out some of the things that the other guys have always said that we did wrong. But you see, they are just like us. So, for example, the use of who has bought property, state property in luxurious places when their salaries cannot afford it. That is one, right? And then in other instances, especially for the majority side, is to continue to do some praise singing so that the records, as they always say, the parliament is a whatever of a house of record, so that the records will reflect that there was total endorsement of one's candidate. All of those things are just theatrics that they go through. But the real important question is, if you engage with it, what is it that you get from it, right? Is there a possibility, for instance, that a vetting process could lead to a situation where it would be very obvious that, no, this cannot be done, right? Or doesn't also not reflect the general attitude of the political class in terms of how they deal with our issues? So it is in moments like this, and I'm sure for somebody like you don't get as shocked because you literally live with them every day. But for many like all of us, in moments like this, we get to see them very closely and then wonder, is this really what they do there in Parliament? Because for us, the expectation is that if you select any group of people to lead a relatively super poor country, right, that is struggling with so many things, the way that they go around problems would be indicative of the existential nature of the kinds of problems that we have. But sometimes when we get very close through moments like this, where we are watching them throughout the process and not bites that Kwaku Asante would bring to us when he goes to Parliament, we get shocked. And then all of a sudden we begin to ask all of these questions. So for me, I am interested to draw people's attention to this, which is also to say that even if we were going to write our own questions and give to our members of Parliament to go out there and ask for us, those things don't mean anything. Ultimately, what this kind of thing should lead us to, the kind of conversation that we need to have, is one that leads us to be very unaccepting of the kinds of basic things that we have, as Philip was trying to argue. Right? We cannot accept those kinds of nonsense as being the norm, because that's just how things are. Because people have elected someone, because they are our leaders, because they're supposed to be wiser. It just doesn't work like that.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And let me give you the last word. Then I can carry on this. I know that you said the first thing and you haven't said much. So you have about 2-3 minutes last word on this, how we move from here, because this process is so important. And Karim vents out his frustration. As someone who's been following this process for so long, I still get frustrated every single year, sitting out there and pointing out questions that I, in my opinion, could have been asked. For instance, I don't see how you have an attorney general designate before you and you don't ask him about legal education, for instance, given how huge an issue legal education is in the country. And so you sit back and you get frustrated. But ultimately, this is the process that we have. We must get it better. How do we get it better so that all Ghanaian people can follow this process and be proud of what is going on?
I think that, you know what, moving forward, I think we should focus more on the policies as opposed to the politics, right? We are done with the campaign. We all know that President John Mahama is the president of Ghana right now. So it's time that we don't focus so much on manifesto. It's okay to bring up the manifesto to make, as context, but to focus so much on manifesto, I don't think we want to hear that now. We know what was on the manifesto. We know what President Mahama ran on. So it's time that we move forward being practical. And with these nominees, I wanted to hear what they are going to do. Now repeat what was in the manifesto. Listen, all three stakeholders or key players in this vetting process, the minority comes in, focus so much on manifesto, they come across unprepared that they missed the target. They were now holding these nominees accountable for so many things that I thought they could have touched on. The second key player, which is the majority, they came across as a joke because they came in and were singing praises to their colleagues in their orbit and throwing out the softball questions. So it's almost like, I'm here, you are my buddy, I'm just going to highlight what you've done well. I worked with you for this amount of time and I know you're a great leader. This is not the time to be praising somebody who is in your party. This is the time to put forth the policies and see that if these people are indeed the right people to hold this kind of office. And then when you come to the nominees themselves, they also came across unprepared because we want to move forward and we want to know what you are going to do. Now repeat what we've heard during the campaign that were in the manifesto. So these are the three things that, to mention. I know that the defense nominee and foreign affairs will be coming up next week. Foreign affairs, I think this is where we want to see the relation, Ghana-US relation, Ghana-Western world relation. I think that they should do their homework. All three parties need to do their homework. We talked about, listen, we having global cocoa shortage, right? They did a good job bringing that to the agri minister, but they focused so much on it that I wanted to know practical measures that can be put forth to combat these shortages and also these high prices and also the struggle of these cocoa farmers. Not keep repeating what was in the manifesto. Right. And then overall, I know we have to go. You know what? When people are so blinded by politics that they are not willing to be open-minded to hear the other side of, we right here discussing this important topic. We are Ghanaians, right? You have a doctor on, you have a journalist on, we are representing the masses. And so when we are here and we are pointing out something that we think is wrong, I think, these hardcore NDC, MPP followers need to be open-minded and be able to listen and not jump and making relevant arguments like, my name is, nobody cares about your name.
Yeah, very interesting conversation, and thank you very much, Nana Kakari, always bringing that heat to the show. And Karim, very great hearing you, a big conversation. Dr. Rashid Rahman, thank you very much for coming on. And Philip Sabah, thank you very much also for coming on and for your perspectives. For so many of you who've been sending us messages, coming in with what your thoughts on this important matter. It's something that the conversation is going to go on because the vetting process is far from over. The ministerial nominees that have been vetted so far is even less than half of the persons nominated so far. The whole of next week, there will be vetting of more than 20 ministerial nominees. It's going to go on. John Ramani Mahama will nominate deputy ministerial nominees. He may appoint persons to go into the Supreme Court. Another nominations that require parliamentary approval. And so, members of parliament, especially those of you who serve on the appointment committee, The ball is in your court. The public have given their feedback about the work you do. Great work you are doing. The people say they want some improvement in certain aspects, and they've bared it out for you to listen and take that into cognizance. My name is Kwaku Asante, and the show is produced by Michael Papani Ashale and Collins Frimpong. We'll be back again same time next week on Ghana Connect. I leave you again with what happened on the first day of the vetting with Alexander Afenyomarkin and his chairman.
While he was not one of the persons nominated to be vetted, Minority Leader Alexander Afenyomarkin became a central highlight of Monday's sitting of the Appointments Committee. His tussle with Chairman Bernard Ahiafo and occasional clashes with the majority members of the committee has since become the talk of town.
You're right, no problem. You will listen to me, Chairman. You can't say you can say you've said that to my members. If you now want to extend it to mean that I'm out of order and order, let's have it.
The Minority Leader first started with a lengthy remark at the start of the vetting process, which the NDC likened to a press conference.
This thoughts is unacceptable. Now, post-election violence and national security.
Mr. Chairman,
and
Mr. Chairman, please.
Honorable Mama Erga.
Okay.
With all due respect, for the Minority Leader to use this platform as a press conference, I think is not the best.
The Minority Leader then clashed with the NDC MPs, who he accused of being intolerant.
You would always want to have your say, but you don't want others to speak. That is your problem, NDC. That is your problem.
There was a sharp response from the Majority Chief Whip.
What the Minority Leader said about NDC being intolerant or they have been more cooperative is totally untrue.
Later, Alexander Afenyomarkin said he believed as ranking member of the Appointment Committee, he is the co-chair.
What our standing orders is trying to say is that there is a presumption of a co-chairing of this exercise.
No. There's only one chairman. We don't have co-chair of this committee. And the rules of this house is that we allow the chairman to lead us and direct everybody so that we can have an orderly business. It is as if he is not respecting the chair.
After several intense back and forth, Alexander Afenyomarkin walked out.
We are here to guide you.
Then you guys should do your things since you are your majority. If that's what you do,
we are to guide you.
He returned after a few minutes. His referral to some of the guests of the nominees as foot soldiers also drew the anger of the NDC.
I referred to some of our citizens sitting behind the nominee as foot soldiers who were brought here to make noise. I take an objection to that. Foot soldiers brought myself and the Minority Leader here. So their presence at vettings cannot be a nuisance.
Bernard Ahiafo, who is new to the Appointment Committee and now chairing it, has received considerable backlash from the public, with some arguing he failed to rein in the Minority Leader and take charge of his committee. Kwaku Asante for Joy News.
Keep this frequency clear.
99.7. Joy 99.7 FM.
We've come a long way, yet we never lose sight of our destination. That's why we prioritize progressive conversations on tourism, arts, and culture.
Kwabena became a bigger artist after endorsing candidate Akufo-Addo.
Yes, most people in the creative industry are not buying cars with the music money.
If you want to be an MC, by all means do be an MC. By all means do pursue it.
We throw our spotlight on budding creatives, plus a music party by DJ Robert.